Barbara Windsor's had one of those incredible lives.
Oh, cheeky.
This is the first big interview that's given since she left EastEnders.
You cow!
They was bound to throw in the craze. EastEnders, my lovely husband, who's, oh, goodness knows how many years younger than me.
Underneath that jokey exterior is a fascinating woman.
Oh, actually, yeah, I'm great fodder for him. You know, I'm perfect.
Barbara, I was trying to think of a perfect way of starting this interview where I could adequately describe just how big a national treasure you are, and I found it.
Yeah.
And it was the Golden Jubilee celebrations. You are sailing past the palace in your float, and out of the top, on the balcony, the Queen is saying to Prince Philip, caught on camera, "Oh, look, Philip, it's Barbara Windsor."
I know.
Now, that makes you arguably as famous as the Queen, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I pinched her name, didn't I, Windsor? It is a family name, incidentally, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you what happened. When I was in a musical, my name was Barbara Ann Deeks, and they said, that's not a very good name, Barbara, at 15. I said, oh, isn't it? They said, no, no, no. So we thought we'd change it. So it was either Ellis, which was my family name, or Windsor, which was another family name. Well, that year, Ruth Ellis got hung, didn't she? So that wasn't such a good... but it was the coronation.
Yeah.
So that was it. So I've been Windsor ever since.
When you look back on your extraordinary career spanning 6 decades now,
Yes.
what do you think have been your greatest assets? You filthy-minded lot. I never said a word. Honestly.
But actually, my boobs ain't that big, but I have to tell you something. I only take size 2s, you see. I used to have a very little...
So it's the rest of you that's small,
Yeah,
is the problem,
well, I
is
used
it?
to have this very little waist, you see, and I had a bit of a bosom, but when I walked, it was always like I was teetering over. And so everybody thought I had bigger knockers than I have. But if you actually look at that camping scene, I mean, it's only a poor little white boob. It's not a lot, and that's all I ever showed.
I have studied it quite a few times, actually.
That's all I showed that and a bit of bum one day.
But, I mean, you were a bit of a trailblazer at the time.
I was,
I mean,
can't
no
believe
one
it.
got their knockers out in those days.
No, but I was appalled because you know the silly old story, don't you? That it said in the script that Babs, you know, has to have a bikini where she's doing her exercises and then it has to fly off. I said, look, it won't fly off. It will go on the floor. We'll think of something. So they came up with this idea of a fishing rod with a hook on it. Yeah, and this was the Carry On Camping, where it was in the heart of winter. They were so mean. Oh, God, they were so mean, that lot, that they wouldn't go on location, so they got a field at the back of Pinewood, where we used to film. They sprayed the mud green, painted the trees, put green leaves, stuck them on there, you see. So anyway, so it was right in November it was, so I'm doing this, and then I said, oh, I got very nervous about showing my bosom or anything like that, and so they got this lovely old boy who was retiring the next day. So anyway, so we did it. I have to stand up when I do this. So we did it. So Kenny's going, come along, Barbara. Off they go. Off they go. So I did it. Anyway, the first time, it didn't come off, and I got pulled into the mud. He said to the director, all right, get her up, mop her down, got to go again. Oh, they only wanted to do one take, you see. The second take, he said, don't forget, don't show anything, because we had a censor in those days called John Trevelyan, the film censor. So anyway, so I went again, and it went off, but Hattie went like that with my arm, and I flashed the right boob. Oh, we're going to have to go again, they said. Right. So anyway, when they took it into John Trevelyan, said, we've got two of this scene, one with showing the boob, one not. We'd like to go with showing the boob. And John Trevelyan looked at it and he said, well, I don't think Miss Windsor's right boob is going to corrupt the nation. We'll go with it. So
You've also always had this irresistible appeal to men, haven't you? You have?
No, I don't know. Yeah, well, no, I'll tell you about men. They really want to give me one, like, oh, I tell you, that I've had them say, oh, I could really give you you don't do anything for me.
But you've had rather more, say, the opposite, haven't you?
Yeah.
And you were a very, very naughty girl.
Yes, once I started, I thought, this is nice, I like this.
I mean, my favourite story about you from those days is that you managed to apparently seduce the trumpeter and the trombone player from the Ronnie Scott Band,
that's it.
and then moved on to Ronnie.
To Ronnie, yes, yeah. Yeah, I did. I know, I did.
All I could think was, what was wrong with the drummer?
Who was that? Oh, who was that?
You're not going to tell me him as well.
Yeah, but he came to my room one night, and I said, no, I'm not that kind of a girl. I desperately fancied him. He's watching Les Condon, the trumpet player. That's who I fancied.
Les Condon?
Yeah, Les Condon. No, Les Condon. And, but I loved Ronnie Scott. I thought he was fantastic. I got very much into... Well, this was my agent, Peter Charlesworth, at the time. He said, look, I'm going to send you for an audition for the Ronnie Scott Band. Annie Ross, who was the greatest jazz singer, she's been taken ill and they're looking for someone to go on tour. So that's not me. I'm all, hi, not that, sunny side of the street. I'm all very like that, you see. So anyway, I went down to Ronnie's original club, which was in Gerrard Street, and there were 6 girls lined up, you see, and I was little, and they were all coming out, and they were going, stop, and doing all that. And I came out, grab your coat and get your head. And suddenly he pointed to me, Ronnie, went, I'll have her. That's the one. I
bet he did.
And I said years later, why me? He said, well, you had 2 obvious things, you know. I'll never get... He said... meet me in Leicester Square with all the boys in the band, 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and he said, bring a cocktail dress. And I only had a bridesmaid's dress, which my mother had made me, so I took this bridesmaid's dress, and my mother sat up all night putting extra little flowers on that. And the first thing Ronnie did when I walked and I sat, he said, you sit there, and I sat on the band with all the band, and he went... Which makes me think he didn't employ me for my voice. So, there we go.
I mean, to be serious for a little bit about this, I mean, have you used, do you think, quite shamelessly, maybe occasionally, your sexuality to get ahead, do you think? I mean,
no, absolutely not.
No?
No. No. No? I mean it, because I still now don't think I'm sexy. I've never thought I'm sexy. No, honestly, I'm 4'10½". You know, I mean, I'm not sexy. I mean, little Kylie Minogue, she's only 4. She's sexy. But no, not me. I'm not, honestly, darling. And I've never used it. You can't
carry on. You were probably the #1 sex symbol in the country.
But in those funny films, funny. I mean, can you imagine me doing all that with a fella? And no, I'm quite shy. I used to have a few drinks to get going. Believe me.
Oh, I mean, you read your book. I mean, sex happens on almost every page, Barbara. It's like a kind of... You're at it all the time.
Really?
With some of the most famous people in the country.
And
Maurice Gibb from the Bee Gees?
Well, Maurice, that was... now I'll tell you about Maurice. That was difficult because when they broke up the Bee Gees, I was doing a musical called Sing a Rude Song, which was based on Murray Lloyd, and we wanted somebody to play the jockey. And they got Maurice. Ned Sherring, God bless him, the great Ned Sherring, came up to me one day and said, he's got no balls on stage, Bart. He's got no balls whatsoever. You've got to do something. So I said, would you like to have dinner one night? Would you like to have dinner? He said, yes. So we sat and we had this dinner. And then I said, where would you like to go? My friend, she said, let's go and have coffee. He said, look, Bart. He said, let's get it over and done with. Let's go to bed. And then maybe because he knew that he wasn't giving it on stage. So we went and we had a little moment, and it was lovely.
And did it work? I mean, did he get balls back on stage?
It was better.
George Best?
Tell me, any lady here, would you have turned down George Best? No. I tell you what happened with George. They were having a premiere of a Carry On in Manchester, and suddenly I heard this, these girls. And there was this vision, this absolute vision in the 60s. He was so beautiful. And anyway, in the bar afterwards, he came over to me and he started talking to me. And I said to him, look, don't waste your time with me, darling. I said, you've got all these lovely ladies after you. And he said, when do I ever get to talk to somebody like you? Well, that did it. That did it, you know what I mean? So that was it.
So what happened then?
A magic moment again.
How magic was it, Barbara?
It was great. He was fabulous.
Yes? So, Barbara, in a career that spanned 7 decades, just how have you stayed at the top for so long? Barbara Windsor made her name as a saucy seaside postcard brought to life.
Oh, Rector, sorry.
Don't apologise. Tom, you better pump the organ today.
She was the end of the pier postcard, big boob blonde that you'd love to get your hands on.
Oh, cheeky.
The thing about Barbara Windsor is two things stand out. No, it's not that. It's friendship and loyalty.
And 6 decades later, she's still a sex symbol and showbiz legend.
She turns it on like that, Bar. You know, she'd be sitting here talking, you put the camera on her, bang, she's Barbara Windsor.
She still gets the wolf whistles and she loves it. And she turns around and she'll always say, oh, you've made an Asian sex symbol very happy, love.
If I could be anybody in the world, I would be Barbara Windsor. Or maybe Jerry Hall.
Despite her early movie success, it was the role of Peggy Mitchell in her late 50s that's come to define her.
Phil.
Hi, Mum.
She was already a national treasure, but she became a national treasure in a different way. She cemented her talent in a way.
I'll flaming well kill ya!
You did it for me!
You take back what you said!
You bitch!
You cow!
So at 73, is Barbara now taking the biggest risk of her career?
I think it is a tremendous risk to walk away from a part like Peggy after 16 years, and it wasn't taken lightly.
How often do great roles for older women come along? Very, very seldom. Very, very seldom. The majority of women of our age are out of work. But she's brave. She's always been brave.
I suppose the million-dollar question is fairly obvious. Why did you leave EastEnders at the peak of your game?
People always say to me, how do you survive, Barbara? How are you always like that, you know? So I say, because I turn off. I go indoors and me and Scott, we have a little post-mortem about what we've done, and then I turn off. And then suddenly he said to me, Barbara, you're not switching off. You are 24 hours a day Peggy Mitchell. I said, don't be... He said, no. He said, you are. He said, you'll talk to me and then you'll go off, get your head in the script. They started doing Saturdays as well. And I thought... But that was a big leveller when he said that. And I thought... And I'd lost a lot of friends. I'd lost Danny LaRue, I'd lost John Inman, I'd lost Mike Reed, Gareth Hunt. They were all going very, very, very quickly. And Wendy going. It was... And I just thought... Maybe... And I kind of thought to myself, what am I doing?
I mean, is the pace now of these shows, is it relentless?
Oh, God. Look, I don't like saying hard work. You can't say that. Not when our soldiers are out there fighting and then the nurses and you know, those fellas stuck down the pit, the miners, you know. You can't say, you know, it's hard work. But it is. The hours are long hours. That's all I was doing, was learning,
learning. Taking over your life.
Yes, it was. And he's very honest with me, Scott, and he said, it's not nice. He said, you're not laughing.
Did he feel that it was going to eventually affect your relationship?
Yeah, well, he said, you're not laughing anymore, you don't joke around. And you know, I feel a bit old Barb coming back, you know, so...
You feel like you'd lost a bit of the sparkle?
Yeah, but let me tell you, it was very, very difficult. Every time I say, OK, I'll tell him, I didn't. It took nearly 2 years to make that decision.
Because in the back of your mind, you must be thinking, you've been in the business a long time.
Yes.
EastEnders came at a crucial time for your career.
Did it just?
Sort of bailed you out.
Oh, it
in many
did,
ways.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
to walk away from this
yes.
unbelievable job, which gave you, won you great awards and national acclaim.
First time I'd ever got an award for my acting. I've got loads of awards for me bits and pieces. But I had National of the Year.
You were Rear of the Year.
The very first one, for these and all. But never ever for my acting, and it was amazing. And the awful thing is, I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved that whole thing of going in and, you know, in the wardrobe. Hello, Kathy. Hello, Zoe, the makeup girl. I loved all that, you see.
I mean, you must... Obviously, you don't miss the workload, but you must miss Peggy and the show, don't you?
Oh, I do.
And do you have moments when you wake up and think, what have I done?
Yes, I have. I'd be lying if I didn't say that, you know.
How did you tell them, the cast?
Well, I did a couple of them before. Steve, I asked round to the house, and he walked in and he said, what's up? So I said, look, he said, don't tell me, you know. And I said, Well, I think it's about time, but I want you to know.
Did you get emotional talking to him about it?
Yeah.
Because you wear your heart on the sleeves about everything.
And I'm getting emotional now. Because, well, I love that show. Sorry. Oh, Scott! I miss the camaraderie, you know, and they're always phoning me. I say, don't phone me.
Can you watch it?
I didn't for a long time, but I watched it this week.
When you watched it for the first time, did you feel a pang to go back?
I didn't, because there's no Queen Vic. I didn't. But once I see that new Queen Vic, that's when it's going to hit me again. But you can't, you know, it's... what can I do? Since I've left, it's been wonderful. I mean, I haven't stopped. Look, I could never come on your show before.
I know.
Because EastEnders would never let me. So, it's true, that is the truth, you see.
It is
but
true.
I remember that this morning, I thought, oh, you got no excuse, Bar? You said yes. You said... But,
do you think... I mean, a lot of soap stars tell me that the workload... And it's not really moaning, it's a reality. That the workload, because there's so many shows a week now...
Yes, you do 8 across each other, and you do it all out of sync, all out of order.
I mean, at its peak, talk me through what your working week was like. How bad was it?
Well, it would be 6 days a week. And
how many hours a day?
It's 13 hours. Yeah, you see, they don't allow you to get into work. Once you get into the studio, let's say your makeup time is 7:30, 8 o'clock, that's the time they allow, and then after that, I think it's 12 hours, you know. So it is a long...
5-6 days a week?
Yeah. And the thing about me, Peggy, she was always in the front, wasn't she?
I mean, you were basically a hostage to your own success.
Yes,
because the bigger Peggy became, thanks to your acting, the more workload.
I know, it did. Yeah. But I loved it. I absolutely adored it. But I didn't know it had taken me over, because you can so easily play a part and it can take you over. But
apart from Steve, who are you least looking forward to telling when you decided to go?
Well, there's the 2 girls, and June. No, June.
What did June say to you?
Oh, but she was so upset, and she still is about it. She said, how could you leave me? It's because I love June Brown. She's the most wonderful 83-year-old ever. I mean, she is so hip in real life. I cannot tell you. She wears... When she goes out, she has all her hair coming around like that, and she has all these kind of hippie-type clothes. Or she can be very, very smart, you know, Chanel. And she's just wonderful. She's just a wonderful actress. She can take a piece... I hate her, because she should take a script, and she'd go, da-da-da-da-da-da, oh, yeah, I know that. You know, like that. I loved her. I miss Pam very much, because we started to work a lot, get together with the funnies, you know, which was lovely.
And more importantly, who don't you miss?
I don't miss... Well, actually, there isn't really anybody.
Got to be someone that annoyed you, isn't it?
No, I mean, everybody knows I had a row with Jessie, but, you know, at the end of the day, you have a row, you don't talk for a little while, and then she's having a baby, bless her, and then you see the baby, and you grab each other and say, oh, sorry. You know, that's it. I'm not one to argue and not get on. Even people I don't like, and there have been a couple of people, I refuse to let it get me down.
Any other names we can toss into the mix?
No, honestly, no, there isn't, you know, there isn't. I do get on with people. I do. Even people that are not really my cup of tea, I'll go out my way to make me like them.
When you filmed the final scenes,
yeah,
what was the build-up to that like for you, when you knew, right, this is it?
Well, you see, it's all out of sync. I did that final scene walking... Well, I thought they were going to burn me to death, didn't I? I thought that's it, I've got to... when I heard about the fire and we're going to make a whole new Vic in the George Lucas studio at Elstree, I thought, that's it, I've had it, you know. Well, because I said, don't tell me what my last scene will be or whatever, you know. Whatever you say is OK by me.
So you didn't know if you were going to live or die?
No, I didn't. I did not until the week before I got that script.
What were you hoping it would be?
I didn't want to die. That's cheeky of me after saying I'm going.
Is that because secretly you knew you might want to go back?
I just wanted to think she was out there. That was it, you know.
When you filmed that scene, though, obviously hugely emotional on screen, but in your head, you knew this was it. How were you feeling?
Yeah. Well, I just knew that she wasn't to break down. What I wanted to do was just walk and thought, let's see how long before I have to turn around and look at the Vic. And I almost, if you look, I almost get past it, and I couldn't. I had to look back, you know, right at the end.
And what were you thinking?
Silly cow. Silly cow. Scott! wait till I get home.
So it was Scott's fault, basically.
No, it was nobody's fault. It was my own decision.
But did you feel a kind of...
Oh, yeah. I'd done a scene also with Steve and Daniela and the two girls, and it was the scene where I told them I was going. And I had to be strong, because I had to show him, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing it for Phil. I'm no good to him. I've lost him his kids. I've lost Grant. I've lost you all. Yeah, I'm going. They all kept crying, sobbing. So I had to keep going over again. And an actor, I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. So what you have to do when you mustn't cry is you kind of hold that in. And you just say, don't be silly, no, I'll be all right, you know, and I'm doing that, and they're all going, it was just unbelievable, those scenes, they were unbelievable.
I can't believe what I've just watched.
Well,
I want to take you back to Whitechapel in East London, 1937, when you're born.
Yes.
Your parents, John and your mother, Rose.
Yeah,
it wasn't a happy home for you, was it?
No, because my mother and father were terribly different. Mummy wanted to get out of the East End, whatever, and Daddy didn't. Daddy still wanted to be in the East End, you see.
Did your parents love each other?
I think one of those, they fancied each other gutless at the beginning, and then when it wore off, I don't like you. They didn't like each other. He was a very good-looking man, my father, and my mother was lovely. And she had this gorgeous, thick, red hair, and I had 9 hairs and a knit. She said, oh, just like your father. Gee, look at your hair, she's like your father. I was a big disappointment that I came. But
I mean,
Daddy,
your mother, by your own admission, wasn't very forthcoming with praise for you.
No,
she was very
never.
critical.
It's only after she died, and if I bumped into someone and they'd say, oh, you're Rosie, oh, Rosie, she was so proud of you, but she would never tell me. She'd say, why did I take you away from the convent? Because I was in I went to a convent when I was between 10 and 13, and she said, why? Why didn't you become the foreign language telephonist I wanted you to be?
Did she ever tell you that she loved you?
My mother never told me she loved me. It wasn't until but I love my mum very, very much, but we never got on much, because I was like my dad. I had the laugh of my dad, I looked like my dad, and I think that she always saw my dad in me. And then this terrible, terrible divorce came when I was 13. And I was a young 13, a very extremely young 13. And I remember I had to go into court, and I had to write things he'd said to Mummy. And he was sitting there, and I felt I was being unfaithful to him. When I was awarded to my mother for 5 shillings a week, she said, don't worry, darling, Daddy will still come and pick you up, take you to the cinema, I'll still take you to the dentist. And he walked. I remember he had this terrible yellow sweater on, and he had tacks on his heels so you could hear him. And I heard him walking down, and I saw him, and he walked straight past me. And that was it. And then I used to stand in Stoke Newington, outside Abney Park Cemetery, because he was a bus conductor, hoping I'd see him, you know, saying please. And I did see him once, and he ignored me. So I didn't understand that.
And after he'd gone?
Never heard from him again. And then I get these letters from people who looked after him and said, oh, he was so proud of you. He was.
And from your mother's friends as well, after she died?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my mum. Yeah, isn't that funny? Isn't that strange?
Both of them had these feelings for you, they just couldn't express to you.
No, I know. But I get that love in the theatre, you see.
Is that why, when you came in here...
Love it, yeah.
...and the audience reacted the way that you did, I could see a real warmth and a love towards the audience?
They're great. When I was 14, I went in that show, Love from Judy, and I came out and everyone was clapping me. God, that's good. I said a line, hey, this is not, I like this. I embrace it very, very much. But I do like, I mean, I'd rather talk to me milkman and me postman than I would some actors. I mean, I do. That's what upset my mum. She came to stay with me one day, and I got a house because of her. I cannot believe my daughter's a film star, and she's famous, and she lives in a flat. I said, okay. So I finally got the house. So she came to the house. She stayed 2 weeks. And when she left, I said, Mummy, it's been lovely having you here. I thought I'd cook all the things that she wanted, try to do everything that I knew. The sandwiches had to be cut in fours, you know. She was snob in her. So I said, thank you for... It's lovely having you. I hope you come again. She said, no, I won't. She said, don't think for one moment, Babs, that I've enjoyed it, because I haven't. So I said, why? She said, well, you put your dressing on, you stand talking to your milkman. Not content with that, you stand talking to the postman. You're yelling out to people and you're dressing out. I said, but that's the way I am, Mum.
if you hadn't been treated that way by your parents,
Yes,
perhaps you wouldn't have had that indomitable fighting spirit that you've always had.
I'm sure you're right.
Barbara, you've had your first taste of the glittering West End and you've loved it, and now the West End's glittering night spots are going to open themselves up to you. In her 20s, Barbara was singing in nightclubs, often dressed in next to nothing. But for someone with her ambition, this was never going to be enough.
Most people just looked at her like that, as a rather busty little blonde. And she was much, much more than that.
At 22, she caught the eye of theatre director Joan Littlewood, who cast her in the musical Things Ain't What They Used to Be, and Barbara became an overnight sensation.
She had her own solo song, which was Where Do Little Birds Go in the Winter. It was a pretty raunchy affair. She absolutely brought the roof off.
The thing about Joan Littlewood is that she opened a door for Barbara Windsor. Giving her leads and opening that door made her realise that she was not just a Cockney thing, she was also a good actress and she was comforting.
Barbara made her first move into film with the musical Sparrows Can't Sing. This East End girl became a West End starlet, invited to all the best parties, where she met everyone from princes to gangsters, including the Cray twins.
If you pointed your finger at Barbara Windsor, you could also point your finger at Ronnie Cray or Reggie Cray. They were all celebrities anyway.
She fitted into that kind of society because she was born into it. She preferred that to the high and mighty, and that's the truth of it.
She had a one-night stand with Reggie Cray and also dated his brother Charlie.
Charlie's a very affable guy, very funny. And of course, when Ronnie and Reggie were introduced, of course, they had a light to her as well. She was an East End girl, and we love our own.
They were charming men, they were good looking, she likes looks, and just a little bit off centre.
Barbara liked bad boys so much, in fact, that at 27, she risked her reputation by marrying nightclub owner Ronnie Knight. When they met, he'd already done time in prison, but Barbara hoped he was going straight.
I can't be 100% sure what she saw in him, but she certainly was very attracted to him and him to her. But it was inevitable that it would go wrong.
Ronnie Knight was obviously very charismatic.
Yes.
You could tell that. Very attractive to women.
My mother said the day Ronnie Knight got out the car, she went, oh, it's your dad all over again, because he was suited and booted very much. And I think that was my passion for Ronnie, because he reminded me of my dad very much. But,
your mother wasn't happy about you seeing him?
Oh, no.
Didn't she offer Ronnie her life savings to stop him going out with you?
Yeah.
So she knew that this was not going to end happily?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you married him, had you got any clue
No, well,
about the slightly dodgier side of Ronnie?
Well, I know he'd been because he went into prison while I was going out with him. And I'd made arrangements and he never turned up. And I remember phoning a friend and saying, where is he? They said, oh, he got 15 months. I said, what for? They said, back of a lorry. I said, what's the back of a lorry? So everything, these things, that's what started it, But I thought, well, he won't. Now he's with me, he won't be like that. And I'd never been to a prison. I remember going to see him at Wandsworth, and I just couldn't believe it. I remember saying to him, you don't want this. So I said, I tell you what, I'll get a flat, I'll leave my family, and I'll get a flat. And this was all in my 21s. And what happened was, in that time he went in then, I got Things Ain't What They Used to Be, and my life changed from being a working actress, which I thought that suits me. I suddenly had my name up there.
And were you aware when that happened that Ronnie might be a problem for your career?
Never. He came out and he bought the Great A&R Club, which was a fabulous club in Charing Cross Road, and I thought, great, this is it.
Then what happened?
Well, next thing I know, they came charging in the house 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was to do with murder. Murder of the guy who shot his young brother.
Did you think he'd done it?
No! He swore to God on everybody's lives like they do, my mother's life, your life. No, I didn't do it. I didn't. I had nothing to do with it. So it wasn't until many, many years later when he did a book. He said, I hired someone. So that was a horrible thing for me to find out. That was a real,
That a man that you loved was capable of ordering a murder.
After he'd sworn he didn't,
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. This thing about you and dodgy blokes. I mean, when Ronnie was sent to prison for 15 months for the handling of stolen goods, you slept with a co-star, but also 2 of the Krays. I mean...
No, well, let me tell you, Charlie wasn't like that. It was a great, great friendship, and he wasn't one of those. He just thought I was lovely and he would take me out. That's what Charlie was like. He was, you know... But that thing with Reggie, I got into a situation. I got into a bad situation. I'd had too much to drink, and I found myself in a situation, and I couldn't get out of it. Crossed my heart, hope to die. And
do you regret that now?
Oh, God, do I. Oh, God, do I, yes.
Because you were always quite supportive of the Krays.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a silly thing to say, but I know it sounds silly, but you can only speak as you find.
Yeah.
And
how did you find them?
Very, very nice, very nice. You know, I didn't know that all... I was shocked when they finally when they got nicked. I thought, oh, my God... You know, there's been murders, there's been this. I didn't know that. And, you see, we used them. The reason I got to know them was because we used their club in Sparrows Can't Sing. Joan Littlewood wanted an original East End club. And I kind of... Charlie had come to see me in the show. He'd asked to meet me. He came to see somebody in Things Ain't What They Used to Be, a friend of his, and he asked to meet me. And I'd been out to dinner with Charlie, who was a gent who'd never jumped all over me. He was charming. So I asked Charlie, and of course after that, they said, well, could you do us a favour? Can you do a couple of charities? So there was me, Victor, Spinetti, a whole load of us used to do charities for them.
Is it quite a relief, though, that you're now in a circle of people who don't go around murdering everyone?
I know. Because I get, every now and then somebody has a pop at me in the paper about it, but at the end of the day, I am quite naive. Ask me about show business, and wow, I can tell you. But about life,
does it come down to? I mean, are you a good judge of men? Do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so till now.
Before you met Scott, I mean, it'd be fair to say, I think, by your own admission, that fidelity never figured massively highly in your life.
Ronnie could never understand that either.
Really?
Well, when I went to America, I was on Broadway. I said, now, don't forget, if you feel the urge, don't worry about it. And he'd say, yes, that's typical of you. That's typical of you in your theatrical life, he said. Just go off. And I said, but I'm just saying that to you. And that's how I always felt like that. It was awful, wasn't it?
But so you didn't mind him being unfaithful?
No, but when I was there... No, not while I was with him.
But is that because you wanted to be as well?
I think so. It gave me an excuse.
Well, you were a naughty girl, weren't you?
God, yes. Yeah, I was.
Are you still a naughty girl?
No, never. I've been totally... Well, I'm 73 now. I've come off it.
I don't think that would stop you.
No, but I wouldn't. I love my husband so much. It's unbelievable how much I love him.
I mean, have you...
As I say, I've been in love 3 times in my life, you know. And they're all different, my loves. You know, the 3 loves I've really loved.
You've never had children?
No. And that's always a difficult... God, I'm glad it's a man that's asking me that. It's you, Piers. Because I got pregnant 4 times, and 4 times I had an abortion. But, you know, it was of an era. My mother never told me anything. She didn't even tell me about periods, anything. When I got my first period, I was told I'd hurt myself. It was all cover up. And when I got pregnant, first time when I was 17, it was like, no, you haven't. But we'll take you somewhere, and take me somewhere, which is what they did. But never then said what you don't do. So I went and did it again, because I was beginning to like it. So that's how I got pregnant 4 times. And it's stupid. And I was talking to a very famous actress. But she's about the same age as me. And I met her a little while ago, about a year ago. And we were talking about this. And she said, whoever would have thought, Barbara, we could have had children. You know, we could have, you know, because it was so disgraceful to have a child out of wedlock. Was so wrong.
It was shameful at the time.
Oh, gosh. Do you know something, ladies? I know the ladies... You won't believe this. If you went in to get into a chemist to get some Tampax, and you didn't have a wedding ring on, they'd give you filthy looks. That meant you weren't a virgin anymore. It was hideous. My mother never told me anything. And that's it.
Does a little part of you regret not having children?
Well, I never got the opportunity, you know. I mean, so I made this my children, my life. This is all my children.
I mean, you did have opportunities because you got pregnant 4 times.
Yeah, I know, but it was all in that period.
I understand that, and you were young and confused and everything else. But Do you look back now and think, I wish I actually had a
Well,
baby?
I would like to thought maybe I could. Like today, they have a choice, don't they? They can... It's not your disgrace, cast out and all the rest of it, you know, or take the baby away.
I mean, now you don't have that joy of
because I love kids, because I've always got kids around me.
Do you ever think about what kind of mother you would have been?
Yeah, I think I'd have been a good mother, and I think I would have been very strict. I think I'd have been like my mother. But in actual fact, I'd be in a state now, because I think the world is so hard for young people. I really do. They're allowed to do what they like, and I don't know, it's not good today, the drugs and everything. I think if I would be a grandmother or a great-grandmother, I'd be worrying. I'd be a right worrier.
Do you kind of understand a bit more about why your mother was the way she was now?
I do, because it was the war years, you know.
So it was tough.
Yeah, I mean, she had an abortion, because when she took me for my first abortion, she said, I want to explain something to you. I've had this done to me, because your dad went to war, and I thought, I can't be lumbered with it. There was another child. There was suddenly, from women having 5 kids, when the men went to war, they said, hold up, we're not doing this anymore. And you'll see a lot, like Anna, my friend, Annie Ross, my other friend, we're all the same age, and we're all only children. Only child. It's only that, isn't it?
Does Scott ever wish he'd had kids?
Well, it's funny, when we first met, because he's so many years younger than I said, there won't be any children. He said, I don't want children. But who knows, when I go to that big carry-on in the sky, he might meet someone and change his mind. I don't know.
We're talking carry-ons.
Yeah, OK.
Before EastEnders, which,
Yes.
of course, is what's made you super famous now, it was, of course, the carry-on films.
Yes.
That very much defined your career. How did you land one of the great comedy roles, really, of certainly my lifetime?
Well, I tell you what it was. I went to the studio to see my mate Ronnie Fraser, and as I walked down the studio, the carry-on people were there, and they said Barbara Windsor would be good. They were looking for a new, funny little blonde, you know. And that's it. So my agent said at the time, please do this, because you don't like filming, and you might get to like it.
I mean, your first scene was with Kenneth Williams, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Carry-on spying.
Yes.
There he is. And apparently he's lethal with new stars of shows, right?
Yes.
He's just terrible to
he's
work
terrible.
with.
He doesn't like anybody new. He didn't like
So how
anybody
are you feeling
new.
walking in there with
Terrified, because I admired him so much. You know, I'd seen him play the Dauphin and do all these wonderful
And how did you
plays.
deal with him?
Oh, I cannot tell that story.
Well, you can.
I
Go on, you can tell
I
it.
promised
Brilliant.
her I'd never say it again. And I bumped into her recently, and I said, will you forgive me? And she went, I'll think about it, as long as you don't say it again.
Force yourself.
Oh, crikey. When I arrived on my first day, you ask questions, and you say, what's so-and-so like? I said, what's Kenny like? And they said, he's lovely, but he doesn't like new people. He's very funny. And at the moment, he don't mention Fenella Fielding. You know, hello, darling, that one, you know. so we're sitting round this table, and Kenny's got this great big black beard round him. And it was my first line in my first carry-on. And I opened my mouth, and I went, sorry, don't like nerves. And he went, oh, Ducky, do get it right. Like that. So I was very flash in those days, so I raised up to my 4'10½". I said, don't you ever go at me with Fenella Fielding's Minge Air Ranger chops. Sorry, Fenella. And he went, oh, isn't she lovely? I love her. And that's how he ended up by coming on my honeymoon with me.
So, Barbara, it's 1964, and you're about to embark on the Carry-On films, which became the biggest thing for your professional life and also, at the time, for your personal life.
Yeah.
The Carry-On franchise was well established when Barbara signed up as the resident sexpot in Carry-On Spying at the age of 27.
She was using an element of herself that she knew went over well with males, and it was very clever.
What about that, then?
Barbara was more than just eye candy. She had comic timing and was a genuine star. She was also more daring than other actresses.
She was the first one to flash her bosoms, wasn't she? 99% of the women in that time would say, oh, my gosh, no, I can't do that. Oh, my word, no. Barbara said, all right, darling, let's get on with it.
And fling and in, and fling and in, and fling.
I don't remember what I thought about Barbara's breasts, other than they were probably quite perky.
Whilst Barbara charmed a generation of men on screen, off-screen there was talk of an affair with one of her co-stars.
What effect does Barbara have on men? You should have asked Sid James. Weak at the knees.
Hi.
Some things can happen on a set that isn't normal in real life. You are loving that person for the while that you are working together. It's because you're making magic together.
I don't know if Sid James was a womanizer. I do know he had a lot of feeling for Barbara. How could I tell? Just by the way he looked at her. I don't want to say anymore.
When did you first meet Sid James?
We were doing something for charity, and I just knew him as Sid James from, funny enough, the theatre.
Did you see lust in his eyes?
No, my affair with him was only the years I was in the Carry On London with him.
So not that long?
Never when I was in the films with him. Right, ever. He tried, but I would never, ever.
Because he relentlessly pursued you, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And he used to get very moody about it, not talk. And then the publicity guy said, do me a favour, he's giving me a real bad time about you. Can you please go to dinner with him? Please. So I did. And I thought, right, he obviously thinks I'm some fantastic, sexy raver. He really thinks I'm great in the sack. Right, I'll show him. And I just laid there. You know, I'm not being... And I thought, that's it. So
and you thought you were fantastic.
Yeah, I thought that was it. Never said a word. And we used to go on stage and go on. 10 days later, you sit there and I'm sitting there, and he just looked at me and said, I have to see you again. I can't bear it. That's how it was. And then I got very into Sid. I really, really did.
Did you fall in love with him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was gaga over it, absolutely. And then suddenly I found myself exactly the same. And I don't know how I got out of it. I somehow got out of it. I somehow did. I don't know.
When you saw his widow recently...
Yeah.
That must have been quite a poignant meeting for you.
Yes, it was.
How did that come about?
We went to a funeral, and suddenly I heard someone say, Barbara, Barbara. And I turned round, and it was her. And she put her arms around me. I said, how are you? Lovely. She said, look, the family's here. And I said hello to the family and all the rest of it. And that was that. And then when we went out...
And she knew, presumably?
Yes, she did, yeah. I think...
Had you ever talked about it before?
I've seen the things she has said on the television, and she said that he said, oh, it's just one of those things. It'll all be all right, Val. And I'm sure I was just one of those, things to him. You know.
Do you think that? Or do you think
I don't know. I didn't think so. I mean, I was silly that I went that far, because I was also like that. It was always like that with me and him. And in the end... but I did. I cared desperately for him. I used to worry about him, because I knew he wasn't well. And I remember nagging him, saying, you can't... He was going to go on tour. Because we never spoke. We ended up by not speaking. I said, don't let's speak at all. And then suddenly I got a telegram from him saying, I'm going to be going on tour. Can I see you before I go on tour? And this was about a year later. And I remember writing to him and saying, you cannot do that because you'll hate it. And he died on stage in Sunderland.
When you heard that news, what went through your mind?
And I always remember phoning Ronnie, and said, which was not a nice thing, I suppose, and said, could you come home? I said, Sid's died. And he said, no, I can't, I've got things to do. Anyway, when he came home, I was still crying. And he said, I wonder if you'll cry like that over me. So it was quite weird, And I could never talk about Sid for ages and ages.
What would have been the truthful answer to that question?
Well, as it's turned out, no, it wouldn't be.
What was it like to work on Carry On? I mean, it seemed such a riot on screen.
Fabulous. But you had to get... It was only 1 take, 2 takes. They had it off to... They had the same cameraman, the same lighting. Everything was the same. In fact, it was the same, but different costumes. That's what it was like, really. But it was wonderful. I mean, what would happen? You'd do your scene, and you would... double-check that you knew your lines for the next one, and then we'd all disappear. Sid would get go like that and get out the cards and find someone to play a bit of poker with. Hattie Jakes and Bernard Bresslaw would do the Times crossword, all those very posh crosswords. Joan would go and sit with her stand-in and talk about the price of meat in Tesco's. Charlie Autry, God bless him, thought the carry-ons were quite beneath him because he'd been this very famous film star in the 40s.
That's kind of the way he came over in the films.
That's it, exactly, the Will Hay
Who were your
films.
favourites of all?
Kenneth. I'd sit with Kenneth and he'd tell these wonderful jokes. They would all be the same but with different characters. Oh, did you hear the one about the vicar and the balls? Oh, and he would go like that. And I'd sit there like that, listening to his
Because
every
he was
word.
a genius, Kenneth Williams, wasn't he?
There isn't a day that doesn't go by. He makes me cry because there is...
No one quite like him.
Oh, he's
before
just,
or since.
And I always say to Scott, I wish you'd met him. I wish you'd met him. He was one... Do you know what? He went for 2 years not talking to me because I wouldn't go to... it's not I wouldn't go. I was working in a show and it was his first of the London weekends an evening with, and he was the very first. And because I couldn't go, he never spoke to me for 2 years. I used to see him in the street and he'd walk across.
Really?
Yeah. And then one day I got a phone call from him. Barbara, Kenneth here. I said, oh, blimey, I haven't heard from you in a long time. He went, no, I know. Well, I was off you. Was I? You goes like that. He said, my milkman is, you're at the Palladium in Pantomime. Now, my milkman and his wife and family coming to see it. And I said, well, you might, see him backstage. I said, of course, darling, of course. He said, I knew you were. I said, you're great. So you know what I did? I did the whole lot. I got champagne and everything, and I took them backstage, took them all over, really made a fuss, So...
I got you back in with him.
Yeah, and he went, oh... And he wrote me the most... He would write wonderful letters, he would, Wrote me the most wonderful letter,
Is he the one... along with Sid, that you miss the most?
Oh, it's Kenny. It's Kenny through and through. I miss him so very, very much. Because he's always mentioned. He's always... No, it's Kenny I miss the most.
Obviously, Carry On was brilliant for your career, as it was for so many people in it, but did you...
it wasn't.
I was going to ask you, this whole typecasting thing...
No, it wasn't. It was always bad for me.
Was that the same for
no one
everybody?
would accept me when I hit my 50s. I went for an audition for Bergerac. I was well into my 50s, and the night before, they showed a Carry On film. And I walked in, and this guy, the director, he went, he said, oh, lovely to see you. And I was a little young for my age, I know that. And he said, oh, tell me about what was it like working with Kenneth Williams? What was it like doing the... And I told him, and this and that. And he looked at me suddenly and said, oh, you can't play the mother of two. You're too young looking. And I said, well, there is such a thing, I said, as acting, And he said, and that's how it was. I'd go for things, and they'd say no, because they put them into television. And once you become a character in people's homes, that's what they know you for, you see. So there I was in my 50s. So what I did was I got my act together, and I went round the world, and I also did every theatre in Great Britain.
I mean, life's got a bit tough for you suddenly. You've gone from being this huge star, work's beginning to dry up a bit, your confidence is low, you're feeling unattractive, unwanted. Then you meet this guy, Stephen, who becomes your second husband.
Well, it was on the rebound of my marriage.
I mean, Stephen seems to me almost like a kind of blip in between...
Yes, it was.
Ronnie, who you didn't really love.
I want to say sorry to him. I should never have got involved with him. He was a young man. He had a good career. He was a manager of a restaurant. But I was so down over the business with Ronnie. Everything... I was in a bad state. I was in Scarborough and I met him. And then he gave up everything and came to London. And then he was with... He said to me, my parents aren't happy that I live with someone. Could we get married? And I found myself getting married. Silly. But he was a lovely boy and he's very nice.
You're sorry to him, but he gave a terrible interview about
it.
Do you know
that? And he phoned me up and he wrote to me and said, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't
just to remind him what he said it didn't take long for the novelty of bedding a woman the same age as your mum to wear off.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that is unbelievably hurtful.
It was horrible. And I was with Scott when that was... And I always remember, I said, I can't go out. I'm never going to go out again.
Well, why do you now feel sorry to him? It's like, come on.
Well, because love, he wasn't showbiz. He wasn't, turned on.
But he was pretty hurtful.
Him, you could easily put things into his mouth. You could. So there was lots of things that weren't true in that article, but he hurt me very, very much. But he wrote to me and said, I never meant it like that. I got twisted, I don't know. And so there we go. And he was the first one to write to me when I got EastEnders.
Was he?
Yeah, wrote me this wonderful letter and said...
You ever speak to him now?
You are... No, I never... No, I don't know where I think he's somewhere in the south, down south, you know, now.
You meet Scott, and I want to kind of gloss over Stephen. It's almost like he was the one in the middle.
Yeah, it was 1 year.
That was a mistake for both of you.
I was with him a long time, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
But it doesn't seem to me to be that significant.
I know, I agree with you.
I agree. Life. The significant relationships, it seems to me, were Ronnie and Sid, actually.
Yeah.
And now Scott, who you meet now. I mean, tell me how you met Scott.
Well, it was when times weren't good and I was playing in pantomime.
You're always in bloody pantomime,
well,
aren't you?
I was doing theatre.
It's like your comfort blanket.
Yes, I'd always do pantomime. Hello, everybody. My name's Aladdin.
Behind you!
Yeah. Oh, I love all that. I love pantomime with a passion. So I was doing Fairy Godmother in Brighton. And, of course, I knew his mum for years over the years. She phoned up the theatre, she said, Babs, every time you come here, you never come and see me have dinner. She's that wonderful Jewish lady with... And I knew Ronnie, her husband, who was a friend of Ronnie Knight's, because that was all that Stanford
Getting
Hill...
very messy this
Yeah,
time,
I know, but we all knew each other. We all kind of... So anyway, so I went for dinner. So she said, let me send my son Scott to pick you up. I said, OK. So I got myself ready, and a knock on the door, and I opened it, and this young man was there, and he said, hello, my name's Scott, and I'm Rita's son. I've come to take you. And I thought, well, aren't you nice? Aren't you delightful? And I found myself saying, would you like to come in?
I bet you did.
Yeah, but anyway, he said, no, we'll get there. So I got in the car, and he's talking away in the car about this and that. And then I said, well, what actually do you do? You know, And he said, well, I'm an actor. Oh, so I said, can you just tell me how old you are? Thinking he'd say 17, 18. And he said 29. And my head went... I thought, who are you?
So it moved from thinking, oh, you're only 15 to...
Yes.
Oh, I can go to bed with you.
Yeah, I just thought he was hot.
So Scott's 26 years younger than you. Did his parents
No, she
approve?
Rita did. Because she loves me.
Approved?
And the family were great. They embraced me so much. It was fantastic.
I think
he'd gone through some really dodgy girlfriends. And he'd had his heart broken badly.
Thank God Miss Security comes along.
Yeah.
Twins, Georgie Best, hundreds of affairs. Oh, thank God Barbara's arrived in our son's life. What a relief.
He had, and he was, and we got on so well. And I thought, and it was funny because I got entertaining Mr. Sloane, and I thought, I really want to get to know him better. And I phoned him up. I said, I've got this play I'm doing. Would you like to come and hear, because it's Sloane, the other part, would you like to, hear me do my lines? I hadn't told him I'd done it before, years ago. Kenny Williams had directed me in the play. And so he came over, and that's what started it.
So Scott was in your life, which was great, but your career wasn't going so well. But like all greats, you weren't going to let this keep you down for long. At the age of 57, Barbara could no longer rely on sex siren roles to make a living, but she still needed to work.
Barbara had been with me for a couple of years, and it had proved rather difficult for a woman in her early 50s to get the roles that would have been right for her.
The reality was, things were really tough.
But a lifeline was just around the corner. There was a role going on one of Britain's biggest soaps. A mum was wanted for the popular Mitchell brothers.
I think people have to remember that casting Barbara Windsor in a soap like EastEnders and a part of Peggy Mitchell was a risk.
In those days, we didn't have known faces in the cast.
Barbara was the obvious choice, but it was essential that she had the right chemistry with actors Ross Kemp and Steve McFadden.
When she came in for the screen test, obviously it was an audition because it's Barbara, we all know she's great, but it was whether she was right and the chemistry was right.
Steve and I were desperate for her to do that. And, I don't think there was anybody else we'd rather have had or anyone else who really could have played the part.
But she just nailed it at the test. With Ross and Steve, who both came in on a bank holiday.
Are you a butcher or a Mitchell?
Me and Ross we thought she's got it. We walked off, smiled at each other and thought, shook hands and it was a done job.
You sleep then, darling. Get some rest.
When she finally did get it, I just think she was so thrilled that her reaction was just to burst into tears and just say, now I've got to be good in it.
You cow!
In just a short space of time, Barbara became one of the most popular actresses on television.
Hope you all enjoyed the fireworks. Good night.
The reaction from the public was astonishing. And she just was a breath of fresh air.
She was involved in some of the biggest storylines EastEnders has ever seen. But after 10 years in the role, it was her life away from the cameras that was to prove more dramatic than the soap itself. One night in 2003, Scott and Barbara were on their way to the Ivy restaurant when they had a serious crash.
Barbara didn't have a seatbelt on. She was flung forward and hit her head, smashed her head against the glass panel at the back of the taxi driver. She was unconscious. I thought she was dead.
Barbara was rushed to hospital, but it wasn't her injuries from the crash that worried doctors. Following routine tests, they discovered that, unbeknown to her, Barbara was suffering from a rare condition called Epstein-Barr. As the disease took hold of her, she began to get progressively worse.
She started becoming depressed. And it's the first time that I'd ever seen Barbara like that after all the years we'd been together. And it was almost as if this lifetime, this roller coaster life that she'd led up till then, it's almost as if she'd suddenly had to be still. And it was as if I saw it rising up and it had to come out. And she had this real bad breakdown.
We did have moments where we thought, shit, she's not going to come back from this. There were times I thought it was going to be the end.
What do you say to someone that says, I don't want to wake up tomorrow?
Did you ever consider ending it all then?
No, I just hope God would do it for me. You know, the main thing is I didn't want to be a burden to Scott, this young man who had his life ahead of him, you know, and I thought I didn't want to be, like, laying and he had to look after me all the time, because he did for over a year. He did everything. He washed me and I couldn't do anything.
What was the lowest point for you?
Oh, well, just when I just couldn't put one foot in front of the other. I couldn't walk or anything. But then you concentrate on this illness all the time. You just can't see anything else. And it was when I suddenly, slowly started to feel better, I thought, I know, and I crawled out the bed and I got this tracksuit on, and because Scott had gone round to get some stuff, some groceries, and I thought, I'll try and walk down the stairs, and at the bottom, I'll be waiting for him when he comes back and see I'm trying. And as I got to the top of the stairs, I went to walk and I fell. And he found me at the bottom with a broken ankle. Do you know what? It was the best thing that happened to me, because it allowed this to concentrate on that.
Kind of snapped you out of it.
I wasn't always thinking about, because can you imagine me lying in bed with that up there and June Brown coming in, Doc Cotton, and Wendy Richard going, oh, gold, oh, you put... And it was like a carry-on film, you know, and I constantly, that's how I seem to get out of it. You know, that's just, there we go, a horrible illness, horrible.
It must have been really tough for you to be out of EastEnders, because you obviously love it so much. When you watch those early scenes there with the Mitchell brothers, with Steve and Ross and stuff, what are your memories when you hear those guys talking about you?
Well, I just love them desperately, I really do. And I remember that someone said, oh, do you treat her like your mum? And Steve said, do I? He says, no, not her. You know, and I don't feel like a mother, I feel like their sister. I just feel like they're good friends.
Who did you base Peggy on?
Oh, several people. I based the look, Violet Cray, because always her hair was done perfectly. The temper, oh dear, Shirley Reed, Mike Reed's wife. I saw her go at it once. I thought, oh dear. So that was it. I love Shirley, I love her. And the snobbishness of Peggy on my mother.
And how much is you?
I don't know, I've got a bit of all that, I think. I think I have, yeah.
Have you got a fiery temper?
Oh, I used to, I don't anymore. I don't.
When was the last time you really erupted?
It was Jessie Wallace.
Really?
That was the last time I erupted.
Well, what sparked it? It must have been like a...
Well, she was late. And it,
So there's Jessie, she's late for the 25th time, and you blow.
Yeah.
Come on.
Don't talk to me like that! Don't talk to me! Don't talk to me! It was just like that. It was just silliness, but I burst into tears. I ran up to the producer. I said, I've been terribly, terribly amateur. It's so wrong for me to act like this. I've done something really wrong. I've lost my temper, and I cried. She was all right. She was fine.
But you've made it up now.
Yeah, of course. It wasn't that I was aggravated with her. She's such a good actress. Don't be like that. Don't, be proud about it. Don't slock in at the last minute, That's what it was, the unprofessionalism.
Barbara, unbelievably, you're now 73, but you're an incredible example to everyone. Despite the 26-year age gap, Barbara and Scott have now been married for 19 years.
I remember when I first met Scott, I said to Barbara, you can't do this. You really can't do this. And she said, why? And I said, he's so young.
Listen, my auntie used to say to me, as long as you don't do it with the dead, your family, animals or children, everything else is acceptable. And I totally agree.
Scott is this amazing presence in Barbara's life. And no, I don't really notice the age difference. I think for me, they're just kind of two pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, one would be lost without the other.
It was great for the gossips, let's be honest. I was an unknown actor. I suddenly appeared on the scene. I hadn't been out of drama school long. Suddenly, we were declaring that we were in love with each other. I can remember some of the quotes at the time. What's Barbara doing with a guy who's got bum fluff where his beard should be? Nice. And there was other things like, what will they have to talk about in 2 years' time once they've got over the thing of tearing each other's clothes off? Well, it's 17 years later and we still don't stop talking, so in answer to that, there you go.
Leaving EastEnders is a massive step, but will she spend more time at home with Scott, or is a new chapter of her career just around the corner?
She's done 60 years in the business.
She would have done that before she was actually born, as far as I'm concerned. Barbara, come on, dear. You're only 45.
She can sing, she can dance, she can do any goddamn thing you want her to do.
You snap Barbara Windsor in half and it's got showbiz written through her like a stick of Blackpool rock. I mean, she'll never retire.
So have you and Scott stopped tearing each other's clothes off, or...?
Oh, goodness me, I'm embarrassed. No. It's more comfy, let's say. It's a little bit more comfy now.
But are you familiar with the word cougar?
Well, do you know what? They put that in the script in EastEnders, and someone yelled it at me, that word, and I just took it. I just thought it was an animal. So I just took it in the nose. And then when Scott saw it, he said, they were having a dig at you. They were having a dig at us. So I said, well, yes, I do now, but I didn't at the time.
It's not always been rosy sailing with Scott, has it? I mean,
No.
How have you worked out the secret of a happy marriage, do you think? You've got there with Scott somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. We had everything going against us, plus he had a terrible alcohol problem. And I used to drink, and I used to try and match him. And anyway, he gave it up just like that 8 years ago, and he's been 8 years clean. And then when I got my illness, I stopped drinking. I haven't drunk for, 7, 8 years.
Not at all?
No, not even I can't even look at a glass of champagne, which I used to love to start the evening if I was going out with, we'll have a nice glass of champagne, like that. But no, I don't know.
You don't miss it?
No,
Scott doesn't drink either?
No, and the great thing is we know everything that goes on. We know all the gossip the next day.
You remember it all?
We remember it all. Yes, it's absolutely
You've become
fantastic.
the most dangerous couple I've been with in the world.
And I never want to go home, whereas it started to get to me, the booze. I'd have about 6 or 7 drinks, and I'd go, oh, can we go home now? Can we go, like that. But no, I enjoy myself far more.
What's the one bit of advice you would give to people to keep a marriage alive?
Oh, to talk to each other. I don't know. We do. We rabbit all the time. And I'm bad. If I have a row, I have to make it up. He's not. He can hold the rows. He can hold it on a bit. But I always give in, even if it's his fault.
And is it usually his fault, would you say?
No. It's usually mine. It's usually I've done something.
You've been everything from the Queen of Carry-Ons to the Queen of Walford.
Yeah.
When you look back on this extraordinary journey you've gone on, what's the one great moment, do you think? The greatest of all for you?
Well, in show business?
Anything.
Oh,
Anything.
I don't know. I would say meeting Scott. That's that's number one. It has to be. I am so happy, Piers. I cannot tell you. But if you said a career in showbiz, it would have to be the day I stopped the show and things ain't what they used to be. Lionel Bart, he wrote a song for me called Where Did Little Birds Go To? I came out and sang it on the opening night, and my whole life changed.
And if,
You know.
when eventually, and this I suspect may never even happen, you finally leave this mortal coil,
Yeah.
and you could write your own obituary, would you prefer it to say, world's most famous giggle dies, or world's most famous cleavage?
I don't want either of those. I don't like either of those. Oh, I'd like... she was a good bird.
Barbara, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow, we're giving you another chance to see the Specsavers Crime Thriller Awards at 10 o'clock. Back to This Evening, and Wycliffe is up next.